Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing another video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And this is kind of a humorous take on a reaction that is fairly common among dishonest people. And regrettably, I deal with a few dishonest people, and most people have in their lives at some point. But there are thieves, there are liars, there are people who will make a habit out of doing this stuff, cheating and deceiving. And it's funny that, especially thieves who know what they're doing is wrong, usually they know something doesn't belong to them, and they'll use an opportunity sometimes to obtain something that they don't need to have necessarily. And it's funny that they get angry. This is the funny part when they are confronted about the incident. They'll get angry about it, and I believe it's a learned behavior. They have sometimes learned that you can act as if it dovetails with their behavior to begin with, in the sense that being disingenuous or dishonest about your feelings in any case can be advantageous in the short term. And it's true. You can bamboozle people today, but then there's tomorrow, right? And the facts come out. They say the truth is never far behind. So I guess, these people figure if you run away fast and you just keep doing it, you can make a short-term profit model, but maybe they just don't even think that far with it. But I like to not always have to run away and, start a new life every 5 minutes myself. So I like to be honest, but that's a digression. So this behavior I mentioned, where people will get caught stealing something, is sometimes something very big and important, and they'll double down and they'll say, no, it was up for the hunt, or it was abandoned, or it didn't belong to them to begin with. They'll come up with all this stuff, and then they'll pretend to be mad about it. Here's the thing: they'll pretend that they're upset about the allegations. And I don't believe that most thieves are sincerely upset when they get caught. It's a defense mechanism. It's like I said, an opportunity to create an impression in the hopes that people, out of confusion or lack of evidence, might give you the benefit of the doubt. And it turns out that there is something called righteous ire. Ire is anger and fury about something, especially false allegations could and should make somebody upset if they're serious and publicly disclosed. But at the point of being a thief, by the time you've taken something that didn't belong to you, and you knew you took it, and you knew it didn't belong to you, you abandon that right. And this is the funny part: you give up, you trade that right in for the gamble of short-term profit and possibly getting away with something. But if you don't get away, if you lose that gamble, you don't have any rights to anger anymore. And this is actually true for many crimes. You'll see this in people when they get caught doing something that they know they shouldn't have done. Sometimes they become belligerent. They create a conflict just to escape the situation, to end an interview or an interrogation, a conversation about it, and they'll create some kind of adversarial atmosphere, so that you hopefully don't want to talk to them anymore, and then they escape, right? They leave really quickly, and then they avoid you. But it's a little bit sad living that way, seeing people live that way, having first of all a desperate need, apparently, or not. I mean, sometimes I think it starts out that way, as getting pushed in the wrong direction by the people we trust at a young formative age, and then also desperation. And most people have bills to pay in their lives if they're adults. And this connects, lastly, I think, to our economic system, where we receive no subsidies under this economic model, and everybody is forced to work at gunpoint if they're not disabled, retired, or independently wealthy to begin with. Like, say, if you had some kind of inheritance, but you're forced to work otherwise at gunpoint, or else they throw you to the elements. You can't, for example, stay in a homeless shelter indefinitely. You cannot. in the city, God bless you if you've never been homeless, let alone in an urban place. But there are tactics to fight the homeless. There's anti-homeless architecture. There's an attitude by the common person, business people, and especially authorities that is wildly hostile to homeless people. And they're vulnerable, they're exposed, and I don't mean to digress too far down this path, but they are that way because there's nowhere to go. Usually, they don't. Most of them don't choose to be homeless. It's something that happens from running out of money at first, usually, right? And some people who may not be imaginative enough to get out of the situation, it can be very difficult. Is turn to crime, and it's not just crime. It's sometimes a combination of things. It's taking substances because of the stress and emotions involved in having economic hardship. It can be a short-term fix for a lot of people. Drugs and alcohol kind of takes away the pain and suffering just for a few minutes, but then at that moment when they're intoxicated, they aren't responsible for their choices, and it becomes a downward spiral, right? And then some of this is obvious. You get drunk and you make some mistakes, and then the next day is even worse, right? It didn't solve anything. It actually made things worse, usually. And if you do that enough, you get fired from your job, and then what? You can't pay your rent. Okay, well, this happens all the time, whether it's from addiction or from, just a legitimate hardship, or some kind of, neurological deficiency. We don't have a lot of, we being Americans in this part of the world do not have a lot of permanent support, safety net, so to speak, such as UBI. This is not a new idea. UBI is a universal basic income. It's just cash that would be given to people to pay their bills for whatever, basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, internet, electricity, clean running water, all the stuff that you need to survive. Uh, Nothing fancy, but you don't necessarily die if you get fired, which opens up an entire universe. Not, again, a digression, but suddenly you're able to consent to work, like legitimately, without duress. This is huge just by itself. You don't become evil out of necessity. You don't start, robbing people because you're starving to death, for example. And if you think people aren't starving in this country, God bless you again. You need to visit the not so well-to-do parts of your own town. Pretty much every town, I don't care how nice it is, has a part that they aren't specifically proud of, and maybe you should go check it out if you forgot if you forgot that people are starving. So anyway, that's a lot to take in. I have very little patience for people who do things that are wrong and they know that they're wrong. Because at that point, there's no fixing it. There's no re-education because they already knew. You can't explain to them why it was wrong because they already knew. The other option is that they didn't know and they were ignorant, in which case the question is, it comes up, why did they do it? Were they confused? Why did somebody rob somebody? I mean, it's a difficult situation. I think the ignorance is an excuse, but there's a line beyond which people are born knowing that there's a line there. And anyway, that's a different video. So reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com and have a great day. Thank you.